Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a dog coming. She knows. I swear to God, it's something about that intro. She just knows that it's time to come and say hello. I don't know if she's like, oh, mum's gonna like sit here and ignore me but also talk for however long, and I just want to get in on the action soon because I like the sound of my mum's voice. Anyway, today I'm going to talk to you guys about this one, the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude Palette. Now, this is late in comparison to everyone else who filmed reviews for this palette. That's because I was never going to buy this, and I didn't buy it. It was actually given to me as an early birthday gift from Madeline. So this palette retails for, I think it's about $114 in Australia, and for me, like, I don't know, I don't want to say that my days of spending over $100 for an eyeshadow palette are over, but I think they're going to be very, very far and few between in the future because, I don't know, I'm kind of at a stage where I don't think it's worth it. To me, it's like buying a luxury handbag or like luxury shoes or something. It's not something that I want to do on a regular basis. And when I saw this palette released, I was like, it's really pretty, and I think that I would like the colors, like I'd like to use them. I'd like the way that they look on my face. I was a bit like, I'm not sure if it's going to be like, is the formula going to be similar to the bronze palette, or is it going to be similar to the Glam Face palette? I don't know. Do I want to take the risk? Not really. So I just was like, I don't need this one. I can live without it. However, like I said, Madeline bought it for me for my birthday, and I actually love it. I definitely feel like this is an extended version of the Glam Face palette. I have the one in light, and this is much warmer than the I Need a Nude palette, and obviously it's got a blush and a highlight in there, but I feel like the formula is more on the level of this, where the shades aren't super rich and intense and like packed full of pigment. They're a bit more subtle, and you know, I feel like you can do more with them. You can do really subtle, or you can build them up for something a bit more bold and vibrant. I do want to touch on this one just quickly. It's the bronze palette from Natasha Denona, and this is kind of what I was worried the formula would be like. Really intense. Like, this palette is nothing but intensity. I always call this like a nude palette for a nightclub. If you are in the dark and you want people to see that you're wearing nude eyeshadows, or like, you know, natural toned eyeshadows, this is the one you go for, not something like this or the Glam Face palette, because the colors in there, like the formula is a bit more muted. It's a bit more subtle. It's more natural, I suppose. I don't really want to go super in depth with this palette. It's been out for a long time. I filmed a bunch of looks with it, so I'm going to put them up. You can watch them while I have a little chat. Mostly I want to chat about the colors and some of the formulas in the palette. I'm going to start by swatching the palette, and I'm going to swatch the colors in kind of categories. So I'm going to start with the mattes. I should mention the names. So we've got Stone, Vague, and Silhouette. Then we have Fair, which is very, very light. We've got Wit, Tender, and Mesh. I might just swatch those last two a little bit more. I'm also going to re-swatch Silhouette, because the way that look, it's just really irritating me. I don't like this shade, and let's talk about it. I really like the matte selection in this palette. I think it's a good balance compared to like the shimmery shades or the satins that are in there. The only matte shade that I don't like is Silhouette. I feel like it's quite stiff and it can be difficult to blend, like skipping, patchiness, stuff like that. not really a fan. I do also feel like this is a bit too dark for me. When I wear dark colors on my eyes, they make me look quite beady because I've got small eyes, so the darkness makes them recede, and it just doesn't look that great. So it's not my favorite. The formula and the color just aren't really something that I'm interested in using. I do think if I was going to do like a smoky wing or something like that, it would be really good, but I would definitely say that this is going to be one of the least reached for shades in the palette. I also think that Fair is, I don't know, I don't know if I'm ever really going to use Fair. When I put this on, it kind of looks like nothing, but it's also not really the right shade for me to be like setting my base or something like that. So I'm not sure it would get much use. I think maybe I would use it to sort of soften something up. But yeah, I'm more likely to just apply the eyeshadow colors carefully in the first place and not need to do that. The other shades I do really like, and they're right up my alley. I love these guys here. These two, just, I love them. They come off quite peachy on me, which I really like. And something I think I might mention right now is the palette is described as a cool toned color story featuring 15 new enchanting muted rosy and nude shades. And it is technically cool toned, but what I found with this palette using it is, since the formula of these is, like they said, muted and kind of sheer, and like, don't get me wrong, you can build it up to get more color intensity. Because they're sheer, they really play off other colors that are around them. So I'm talking about like your undertones, hair color, like the clothing that you're wearing, stuff like that. Those colors can actually throw these off and make them look warmer or cooler than they actually are. And I think that's really important information to know about this palette, because if you are buying it and expecting exactly this to come up and like show up on your eye, you might get a little bit of an unpleasant surprise, because like I said, they're kind of sheer, like they have subtlety to them, which means that they don't just pop all on their own, similar to what this does. Like, this is unforgivingly pigmented and it doesn't care what you've got going on in your hair or on your clothing or on other areas of your face, but this does. This plays off other colors that are around it. So it can look a lot different to what you expected it to when you actually put it on your face. I'm going to swatch some of the shimmery shades, but I'm going to do them in like maybe, I don't know. I feel like there's 3 formulas in this palette. So let's swatch the 3 formulas. These 4 I would consider like run-of-the-mill, old school sort of metallic-y shimmer shades. We've got Whisper, Ella, Travertine, and Filigree. So these guys, I feel like they're a little bit of a throwback to like old school formulas in nude palettes. This, like, if you've ever been a fan of nude palettes and you've purchased some in the past, you're going to be super familiar with this. Like, there's nothing groundbreaking about these this formula here. And I definitely think that of all the shades in the palette, these are probably the most boring and basic, but also they're, you know, they're pretty standard. I was going to say you need these sort of shades in a nude palette, but I guess technically you don't. She could have used all sort of interesting, fun formulas. I do feel that having 4 of this formula and this shade variety is probably a little bit overkill. I think like between these 3, something could have been left out. I did a look using some of these shades where I basically did 2 looks on each eye. So I did the same sort of matte colors, and then I used, I think I used Whisper and Travertine on like a different eye. And while the swatches look really different, and you can see the difference on the eye, I feel like it's almost a tiny bit redundant. Like, I probably could have gone out in public that day and people wouldn't have noticed that I was wearing different eyeshadows on each eye, because yes, they're different, but they're not so drastically different that they have a huge impact on the look. So personally, I probably would have liked to see something switched out here, whether it be a different like texture or different colors, or I don't know, probably different textures, to be honest, because I feel like texture can play a big part on how an eyeshadow looks on the eye and the color that it sort of gives off once the look is complete. This next shade I'm going to swatch on its own. It's called Muse, and it is a super flaky, hugely light reflective. Like, look at that, it's gorgeous, and it feels kind of wet and creamy in the pan. If you dig a brush in there too hard, like it gets a bit, she's chunky, okay? She's chunky, wet, creamy formula. It's really beautiful. I love it. I wish that something here was of this formula as well. I think it would have brought more balance to the palette, and I think it was an opportunity missed, unfortunately, but this shade is absolutely stunning. Let's swatch the last three shades. So we have Delilah, we've got Sheen, and we have Mia. I'm currently wearing Mia on my eyes now. I am going to double swatch Sheen and Mia just because they're kind of hard to show up. This formula is quite nice as well. They feel kind of dry in the pan, but I think it's because it's like super finely milled, almost not glitter, but it's not, it doesn't feel like traditional eyeshadow. We have seen this formula before. If you're familiar with this palette, it's kind of similar, but the color payoff is not as intense. These ones are much more like translucent and sheer, especially these two. Like, you can basically see skin through these colors, so they're gonna give off more of your natural undertone. I have an olive undertone, but like I'm quite warm, and I feel that I make this color in particular look quite warm. The pink Mia, not so much. It's just like this sort of frosty pinky shade. I actually apply these wet or over a sticky base, similar to like the Pat McGrath Intensifies Artistry wand, because if you just apply these over a standard eyeshadow base, they're super sheer, and all they really offer is a little bit of glitz and sparkle. They don't offer a whole lot of color, except this one, Delilah, that does. And this offers like a little hint of warmth, and this offers a little hint of like icy coolness. But if you're trying to get color, especially out of these two down here, you've got to apply them with some oomph. You've got to use a wet brush or a sticky base or something like that, because you're not going to get too much out of them. However, you can also use these shades as toppers over other eyeshadows to make them look a bit more sparkly if you want. Just be careful. I got fallout, so, you know, fallout's annoying. Oh no, did something bite me? I feel like this is just an ongoing occurrence in my life. Everything in Western Australia wants to eat me, and it hurts. Before I received this palette, I had someone leave a comment on a video asking me if I could swatch this palette against the I Need a Nude palette. Although I didn't own it, but I think maybe they might have got me mixed up with Kat, because Kat had purchased it. Now that I have it, I am going to swatch them. I'm gonna do one on one arm, one on the other. I have to do, this is very hard to do with my non-dominant hand, so BRB. There they are side by side. And while Natasha Denona say that these are all new shades, and they are, that's fine, there's definitely some similarities. This palette feels like a much more condensed, simpler version of this and more obviously warm toned. Also, I would say that the shimmers in this palette, so the, let me open it, these two here, while they're a little bit similar to these sort of shades down here in the I Need a Nude palette, the formula is a little bit, it's not as dry feeling. And I feel like when you say, oh, this formula is dry, it kind of has negative connotations that come with it, but I don't really feel that it's necessarily negative. It's just that they're similar, but they're different with their formula. I think these ones here have a bit more moisture to them, which means they naturally just go on a bit more richer and intense, whereas these ones absolutely need to be built up if you want them to have any sort of color intensity. All right, my arms are getting sore, so one last look. There are very clearly similarities. It's just the nature of nude shades, but it's the nature of all eyeshadows. If we were comparing a purple palette to another purple palette, especially if they're coming from the same brand, there's going to be some kind of close similarities where you're like, well, you know, are they so different that I need both? Maybe not. I don't really have too much more to say about this palette. I really like the more subtle formula from Natasha Denona. It's my preference because those are my makeup preferences these days. I also really enjoy the nude shades because that is also my preference these days. I am very glad that I have this palette and I really enjoy it. I've been using it since Madeline was here, which was at the very start of October, and I haven't put it down since. I've just been using it every time I do my makeup, which means I haven't even touched my other eyeshadow project yet. I'm very sorry, I am behind on that, but it kind of tells you that I found this palette really easy to use and I feel like there's a lot to do with it. And if I wasn't kind of keen to get back to my eyeshadow project, I would continue to use this. However, I'm going to say this and take this however you please. I am glad that I didn't pay for this palette, and I believe that I like it more because it didn't cost me anything and it was gifted to me. I'm just going to be straight up about that. I definitely feel like I have a bit of a bias on this one because it means something more to me and I didn't have to pay for it. I honestly think if I paid $114 for this eyeshadow palette, I'd be like, no, it's not worth it. That's not worth it. But also, is any eyeshadow palette worth $114? Like, I don't know. I mean, you have to decide that for yourself. I am obviously in the camp of probably not anymore for me. But like I said at the start of the video, there'll certainly be expensive palettes that I purchase in the future. Those days aren't done for me. I just don't, like, I'm so much more critical about something like this that is not going to last me the rest of my life, even if I desperately want it to, and look after it really, really well. Is it worth that money? I just, yeah, you have to decide that for yourself. And I think what makes it hard is that you are never guaranteed with eyeshadow palettes. I saw a lot of people online who are really excited about this, like before it released, when it was sneak peeked, and people were like, oh my god, I can't wait, it's a cool tone palette, this is what I've been waiting for, and then they got it and they weren't impressed by it. And whether that is, like, some people, I saw that they definitely didn't like the formula, they wanted it to be more rich and punchy like this, and some people said that it just didn't look cool toned enough on them, so maybe they have other really warm tone things going on and it didn't tick the box for them, and that's kind of a shame. And sure, you can return the makeup, but I mean, great, you get your money back, but it goes into like landfill. So that's, I don't know, that's a completely different story. I'm gonna leave that there, guys. I don't really have too much more to say about it, and I mean, Natasha Denona has already released another palette after this one, so it's old news now. But I do like the palette. I love it. I actually think like the color story and the formula is perfection for me, and I've been disappointed by a lot more Natasha Denona palettes. This is one that surprised me, but I think I might have been not the only exception to that rule, but I think a lot of people wanted something different from this palette and were a little bit disappointed that they didn't get that. But then on the flip side, there's also going to be people who are really, really happy to have something like this, and I fall into that category. So thank you, Madeline. I love my Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. It was the perfect gift for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I do want to say a massive thank you to my channel members. I appreciate you guys so much, and I'm gonna leave it there. I will catch you in the next one. Are you, oh, sneezing. Do you want to say goodbye? Do you want to say? Come on then. Come on then. Oh yeah, just knock everything with your tail. Oh, what have you been up to? Why are you all warm? You've been outside in the sun. Yeah, she's cheeky. All right, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Bye.